Evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to a special session, a summer session of the Transportation and Public Safety Committee of Community Board 2. Thank you for taking time out of your summer for this meeting, and thank you to DOT and to its representatives. I note that Commissioner Bray is here for agreeing to move up the report on the survey of Willoughby Avenue, open street, and thank you for the committee members here tonight as well. I had asked the board chair for permission to hold this meeting because I felt there were a number of issues which had been before the committee, which we had not expressed opinions on. These issues had been presented before the board for information, but without a specific request. I thought it would be better if we got a communal chance to express the sentiment of the community with a vote on these two distinct issues: Willoughby Avenue open streets and the Gates Avenue Triangle and the newly announced shared street as part of the triangle. I expect a lively but respectful exchange of ideas and opinion. But in democracy, it's always best if all sides listen to one another carefully, where possible, highlight the areas of agreement. If that means people need to compromise, I would hope that they would do so in pursuit of the better good and being good neighbors and not enemies. I believe our community streets work best when all sides are accommodated. That includes bikers, pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, the elderly and the young. It means accommodating trucks and cars, moving and parked too. After all, the committee supported congestion pricing, which will be funding source for mass transit in New York City. That means that cars and trucks will pay for it. No cars, no trucks means much more limited funds for mass transit. So I ask you in spirit of community to listen to one another and where possible, come up with a community approved solution. If we don't, then New York City DOT will just implement what it wants anyway. Whatever, if anything gets approved here tonight, will be presented to the full board at the public meeting in September. It's not going just before the executive committee. It will go to the full board. We will be following regular order tonight. There will be a maximum of 45 minutes for public to comment on the agenda items tonight. Comments are limited to no more than 2 minutes, with some approved chair exceptions where people are adding so that groups won't be hearing multiple same things. I ask you to make your position known up front, and if you need to say more, then to send to the board a letter or email so that we will have a compilation for the full board meeting. The chat is not an official part of the meeting, and it's not recorded or transcribed. But if it gets out of hand, it will be closed off. Board members and committee members are not to speak during the public comment session. It is for comment, not answers to questions. If people make a comment or that's a question, it won't be answered. That's what you need to do, is you make your comment. People raise their hand or otherwise signify they wish to speak, and you will need to identify yourself. We also ask that you tell us your zip code and turn your microphone off until called upon. There will be a presentation by DOT. Questions from the public will be accepted in chat only, and there's no guarantee of an answer. Committee members will be allowed to ask questions. Debate on what DOT says during the presentation is not allowed and can only be made when motions are open. The board chair has approved the maximum time for this meeting. That's not me, that's Lenny, by the way, of 150 minutes. Committee members are also going to limit it to 2 minutes per round, and there's no guarantee of a second round when their motions are present. As usual, the council member is an ex officio member of this committee without a vote, but clearly we will hear from the council member, Crystal Hudson, or from Lincoln Ressler if they are online. Right. One note to committee members on voting. We will do a roll call vote. If you are interested in attending tonight, I ask you not to abstain. Abstentions are counted as a vote against the motion. If you are conflicted out for some ethical reason, the proper response is conflicted out, to say that you're conflicted out. You don't have to explain why. You just have to say conflicted out. I will repeat this before the vote. Now, please call the roll of members, and I note that John Dew has been appointed a public member of the committee.
Thank you, Sid. Would all the members unmute themselves, so we'll go through this quickly. Though I've already seen most of you already online, but still speak up. Sidney Meyer, Chair.
Present.
Esther Blount, Vice Chair.
Here.
John Quinn, Secretary, here. Ernest Augustus.
Here.
Sandy Balboza.
Here.
Juliet Cullen-Chung.
Here.
John Dew. I don't see John. Cheryl Gelbs.
Here.
Kate Gilman. Brian Howard.
Here.
Patrick Kalaki.
Here.
Nicole Murray.
Here.
Cyril Scala.
Here.
11 of the 13 members are here. We have a quorum. Thank you all.
Well, the first thing on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as written? Juliet?
Motion.
Seconded?
I'll second.
Sandy? All in favor, raise your hand and signify aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
And Brian Howell is also online. All right. I'm going to skip the adoption of minutes. Nicole, do you want to do the district level crash statistics?
Sure thing. Just give me one sec. Okay, so for those of you who have not seen this, this is all data fed in by the New York Police Department open data collision source, and it is put in this visualization tool. This is not my tool. This data is NYPD's. It'll be crash statistics for this community board for the prior month. So this is, oops, hang on. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep, for the month of, what is it, July. So we had 62 total in the district, no fatalities, 18 cyclists injured, 16 pedestrians injured, and 49 motorists injured for a total of 83 injuries. So there's usually more injuries than there are crashes because there's multiple people involved. I'll go through the trend lines in a sec, but as you can see, once again, in the same areas as usual, Tillery, Park, what the heck? Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my computer. Tillery, Park, Fulton, Atlantic, and Flushing. This is where they tend to be concentrated. So for some trend lines, this is the 1 year trend line. So starting August last year, same stats. The blue lines are the number of crashes. The red line at the top are the total number of injuries and fatalities. So again, you see they're higher. You can see they've been ticking up since January. Now in winter, they tend to be quite low, but they've been ticking up pretty consistently. And it's really the injuries that are getting, that are ticking up have been to motorists. You can see this kind of orange red line right here. Sorry, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I'm getting like alerts over and over about regaining control. Hey, I don't know if that's you.
It's not me, it may be Taya.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but anyway, all right. So as long as you can still see it.
Is steady.
Okay, so this kind of orangey line right here is motorist injuries, and you can see they've been really ticking up. These yellow and orange lines at the bottom are cyclists and pedestrians, and they've stayed, lowish and aren't, there's not really a trend here. So it's really among motorists where the most injuries are happening. And this is just sort of like drilled down into 6 months. I also did a year-over-year comparison here. So this is in the first column, July to July, from this year from last year to this, and then the year before. And it's not changed so much. So there aren't major changes here, but I think the key is really that over the last year, we've been seeing a lot more injuries to motorists, and they're all happening as usual in the same area. This is a year map. It's kind of hard to tell with the year because there's just so many, but I'll do the map again for this month in the high traffic areas. Any questions?
I think at some point we're going to ask the police what their what they're doing to try to lessen the number of accidents. But I don't think we're going to do that today. I see, Patrick, you have a question or you have a comment?
Well, thanks, Nicole. I just wanted to ask, are these crashes only those that include a car?
No, so it would be anything, any kind of collision. So bike on bike, car on car, car on bike. There are basically never any pedestrian on pedestrian crashes, at least that are reported. But it's all kinds.
Including bike on pedestrian?
Correct.
Okay.
Although I know parenthetically that those don't get reported as much because people just don't staying around to get the police to make a report.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Okay.
We're going to start the open session for public comment on adopted items. I will remind everyone that except where there's a chair exception, that you're limited to 2 minutes. And I would ask you to abide by that. Taya, do you have the names of the groups on?
One second. My second laptop is still giving me some trouble. Vice Chair Esther Blount, do you by any chance?
Esther, do you have the names of the people we should be calling on? You need to unmute Esther. There you go, you're unmuted.
Dolores, Gillett, and Darryl Rock.
In that order, or should I call Darryl first?
We'll call Darryl first.
Okay, Darryl, why don't you go? You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
But we doing Gates and Vanderbilt before the presentation?
No, what we're doing now is public comments.
I understand they might have comments on the
No,
presentation.
this is the comment period. They won't have the comment period. The way this works is they comment on agenda items. After that, the public does not get to speak. The public.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair.
Well, that's not nice.
I believe the Vice Chair is asking if the public commentary at this period is for both agenda topics or only one at a time.
It's for both.
Thank you.
Point of
There
order.
was changes,
Chair.
there's changes on Gates and Vanderbilt. And I think it would be fair to the public to know about these changes before they make comments.
Point of order. I believe we were told by the controller's office at the end of last year that for any item that the committee was going to take a position on, that we had to allow public comment after presentation and before a vote.
No,
No, that's not right. And how can the public really be engaged if they make comments after the presentation when they don't even know what's going on?
No, he's
That's
saying
not-
that.
and I was talking to Sid, Brian, not you.
No,
I'm agreeing with you, Esther.
No, you're not.
in any case, it's for me to call on people, all right? My understanding is all they said is that the public comment period has to be before the agenda is even started, whether they're comments or not, whether they're presentations or not. Now, whether there's somebody who's commenting inappropriately on the chat, and if that continues, we're going to close the chat down. Taya.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Close the chat down.
Sir Michael Myers, bruh, bruh, bruh.
I actually don't see anything in the chat. Is that me?
I don't either.
I don't see anything in chat either, or I'm blind. I don't know.
I see a wholly inappropriate comment.
Was it
I'm not gonna read it out.
Jesus.
Mr. Meyer, I think you can continue. There are no chats visible.
Okay. In any case, my understanding is that it doesn't have to be after the presentations. it has to be at the beginning of the meeting. The controller's office comment was that on any item on the agenda, the the public comment takes place before any presentation or anything. This is not a public hearing. If it's a public hearing, I agree with you, but this is not a public hearing. So if Daryl, if you want to make your comment, you've got 3 minutes.
Okay. One quick question before I start. Can I put up a picture in the middle of my presentation? Can I share the screen? How does that work?
Taya, can you give him screen sharing, please?
Mr. Rock, you should be able to share screen. Just choose share screen at the bottom of your control panel.
Okay, all right. I'll do that after maybe a minute.
Okay, so you can, your time starts now.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Darryl Rock. I live at the Fort Greene Partnership Homes, and I've been there for over 35 years. There was 100 families that moved in at that time. It was one of the first condos in Fort Greene. We were almost all people of color. And at that time, the neighborhood was not that.
My nigga.
People were not clamoring, trying to get into that area. There was a lot going on. There were gunshots. There was drugs. It was not a good neighborhood. And we stuck it out for these some 35 years. And there's still about 10 of us that live there. Our homes abut right where this plaza will be. And we're against this plaza for 2 reasons. First is the direct quality of life impact that it's going to have. What comes along when people gather, there's noise, there's music, people having a good time, but everybody needs to understand this is right outside of our windows. Please, anybody who's voting on this, go by this area and see what is actually happening. The people's windows, and mine included, these 40 families are going to be facing directly where this plaza is. This is a residential area. It's not a commercial area like where the other plazas are in New York. The J2 where you see Plaza, which I know them very well. It's in a commercial area where there's stores around it. We are residents. The second major issue with the plaza is the whole process and how it went about. We were not included in any of the planning. There were no emails, nobody knocked on our door, there were no mailings, we knew nothing that was happening. It was not until there was a workshop outside on the street where we went and had a chance to talk about what was being proposed. And I gotta tell you, at that workshop, they told us that they were partnering with the daycare center and also partnering with the businesses. Why would they not partner with the people who are gonna be most impacted? Our buildings, again, are right there abutting where this plaza would be. Nobody spoke to us about anything, and we felt disrespected, like as if we didn't matter. It needs to be understood. We're not against green space. We're not against bike lanes, and definitely not against safety. But we're against treating us like we don't matter. The people in this building, and
Black Lives Matter.
We earned the right to be treated with respect in a community that we helped build. I'm going to say that again. With the people that live there, mostly people of color, we earned the right to be treated with respect in a community that we helped build. It's not right. It's not fair to the seniors. It's not fair to the people of color and the people that have lived there over these years. Please don't do this.
Okay, thank you. You want to put your picture up or not?
It's not allowing me to do it when I can't hit the screen share, like she said on the bottom. There's some other material that's on the bottom. I don't know.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I suggest you do is that with the presentation that you submit it to the board so we have it so we can circulate it later on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr.
wait,
Chair,
here it is.
I have the image if you'd like to see it.
Okay, no, here, I have it here.
Put it up.
Here it is. This is,
Put it up, Taya.
it's up now, I think. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
This is the J2WC Plaza, and this is what picture I took a couple of weeks ago at the end of the day. And as you can see, this is not something that you would want right in the house. Where that green wall is exactly where our apartments are. And we'd be looking out on something that looks like this. And I took this maybe 3 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. Esther, you want to call on the next woman, please?
What is this picture? What's the picture?
It's a picture of the pedestrian plaza area.
At Gates Avenue.
Yes.
No,
No.
It's
That was-
Fowler?
That's
That was,
Putnam.
that was an image of J2WC Plaza, which is nearby and also programmed by Fab Fulton.
Right.
and
Okay.
which they used to call Putnam Plaza too, so.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't look like, okay.
Dolores, would you like to be next?
Yes, sir.
And
Thank you.
Dolores. Same thing, 3 minutes.
Dolores,
We appear to have lost Miss Dolores. Dolores?
We'll come back to her.
Okay.
Those people wanting to speak, please use the raise hand function so that we know who wants to speak. John, is that John Dew? Or is that a different John?
John Mahan.
John, you're up. I don't know if you can put your camera on. You don't have to.
No, I can't.
Okay, John.
I also have lived here at Gates Avenue for the last 30-something years, and I'm against this plaza being placed in our community directly under our bedroom windows. I hope that we can find some resolution to this issue that is amicable for everyone, but I'm afraid of the consequences of this plaza, as it may bring not only noise and pollution, but we've had a big problem with rodents from the park area. So I hope that we can resolve this issue amicably. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Lucy Coteen is next.
Hello.
You have to unmute Lucy.
and Dolores came back on.
Okay,
We'll do
okay,
Lucy. We'll do Lucy
sorry,
first, come back to Dolores.
okay, thank you. I just want to point out that Belmonte Montgomery are prior senators on this call, and it would be respectful to listen to what she has to say. And I know she's impacted. Okay,
I'm
but,
talking-
wait a minute, Esther, you're on.
Go ahead,
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Surveys, I wanted to mention the surveys that have been taken. Surveys are supposed to be impartial and are used before events or changes take place. What we have seen in DOT surveys, both on Gates Avenue and Willoughby, is a piece of biased propaganda. I would expect DOT should know how to make an impartial survey. So those surveys are totally illegitimate. I hope they don't try to use them. I sent to Keith Bray a while ago 13 important questions that he said he would respond to me about, and he has not responded. But just to name a few of them, my question for DOT is, why does DOT want to create more congestion, more air pollution, and more noise pollution? Because that's the result of these changes. How is it equitable for some blocks to have a street without car movement while others have an increase of moving cars and noise and air pollution? There's no equity in that. On Gates Avenue, why was there no investigation of the police chase that caused the accident? And why was a person with so many violations allowed to be driving? What is the connection between closing Gates Avenue and the accident that happened there? There's nothing inherently dangerous about this street. Why did no one speak to the people who live right at the intersection, who we've been hearing from, who will be negatively impacted? Are they lesser citizens? And on Willoughby Avenue, I want to comment, the sidewalks are exceptionally wide. What is wrong with the sidewalks? They have worked well for many, many years. And most of the time, the street is empty. I've taken photos of, the street being totally empty while neighboring streets are heavily congested. So those are questions I'd really like DOT to answer, because these closed streets make absolutely no sense. They just hurt a community. Vanderbilt's already a clogged up street.
15
and taking
seconds.
away
15
gates.
seconds.
Sorry, I can finish. And taking away gates there has nothing to do with anything. Why are we doing this? And Fab is not a good steward of the street, as we saw from that past picture of the prior Putnam Plaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now Dolores.
Good evening. Got it. I appreciate this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Willoughby Avenue Neighbors United, known as WANU. WANU consists of residents from the Fort Greene and Clinton Hill community. WANU came together as a result of our frustration after attending the March 8th meeting at PS 20 regarding Willoughby Avenue open streets. At the March 8th meeting, nothing was clarified and misinformation was disseminated. Our main concern, one that still exists today, is the absence of community involvement in the application process for the open streets on Willoughby Avenue. In light of this exclusion, WANU started talking to community residents to solicit their feelings and thoughts. Our community outreach efforts produced a petition signed by 800 plus people, consisting of residents, people who work, attend school, and worship in our community. We documented their concerns and delivered a letter with petitions to DOT Commissioner Idanis Rodriguez on April 2nd. We have never received a response from Commissioner Rodriguez or the Brooklyn DOT Borough Office, which also received the letter. WANU feels that the Willoughby Avenue open streets is not supported by the majority of the people who actually live in our community. We feel that the Willoughby Avenue open streets is driven and manipulated by a special interest group, the Fort Greene Open Streets Coalition, primarily through Twitter and other internet services. I have lived in Clinton Hill for 43 years. It is my belief that the Fort Greene Open Streets Coalition has created a schism in our community. White people against people of color, young adults against seniors, cyclists and joggers against car drivers, upsetting the diversity which has made our community one of the best in New York City. Most people are not good at math. It appears that neither is the Fort Greene Open Streets Coalition. Their numbers and statistics regarding people using Willoughby Avenue just do not add up. The ADA protection that the city and the state has worked on is eroding as more open streets are granted. Denying residents of 210 Clinton Avenue access to Willoughby Avenue forces residents to walk down the block, around the corner, to board their accessoride on Vanderbilt Avenue, with the vehicle parking in the B69 bus stop. Denying the French-speaking Baptist Church on Willoughby Avenue access for funeral caskets forces them to use Vanderbilt Avenue, which also places them in the B69 bus stop. What impact study would have approved these hazardous alternatives? The DOT must stop rubber stamping open streets and bike lanes around New York City, failing to perform due diligence. The DOT must stop surrendering its authority to special interest groups like Transportation Alternatives. The majority of the residents who actually live in our
30
community
seconds.
do not want the Willoughby Avenue open streets. We have a voice, we have rights, we want our streets back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Now, I see 5 people's hands up. We will call those 5 people and then the open session will be closed. Grace PM?
Yes, for some reason my video has been disabled.
That's
but,
okay. That's okay. We hear you.
Okay. So yes, my name is Grace Pian. I'm the board president of the Fort Greene Partnership Homes Condominium. I spoke at the June 22nd meeting regarding the concerns we had of the Gates Avenue pedestrian plaza, and Daryl Rock represented us in speaking already, so I won't belabor the points that he has talked about in addition to the concerns of public input. But I do want to say that the DOT regulations as set forth in the New York City Administrative Code and the rules of New York require that any plaza proposal application demonstrate community outreach, build consensus, and solidify local stakeholder support. And I believe that this plaza proposal does not represent that. And so we really want that to be rescinded. And furthermore, DOT's traffic study, if they're already putting in traffic calming measures to address the safety issues of the streets, we really struggle to understand why we need to close this plaza in addition to those traffic calming measures. And then the final point I want to make is that there are already 4 plazas, public plazas, in a 1 mile radius of our neighborhood in Gates Avenue, which is placed in a mix of commercial and residential neighborhoods. And so while we appreciate the idea of the plaza, here you're creating another plaza within a 1 mile radius in a purely residential area where the lives of homeowners are going to be greatly impacted. So we just want you to take that into consideration as well. So our request is that
your time is up. Bob, no, but your time is up. Bob Sinclair.
Hi, yes, I live in Willoughby Walk and have lived there for 29 years. And I don't want to speak very long because Ms. Gilliard actually said almost everything that I would have and probably more. But the other thing about the open streets of Willoughby Avenue is that Pratt is back actually in session. And when Pratt is in session, having that block, the last block particularly, the block between Washington and Hall, which is the most onerous one to close, having that closed is absolutely outrageous. And having any street closed 7 days a week, 24/7, and I won't take pictures because I don't need to, because I can see all the way from my street all the way down Willoughby Avenue forever. And I don't see that many people. I don't see that many dogs. I don't see that many people walking. And so for the other thing is, after 29 years, I'd love to be able to say, yeah, I kept track of all the accidents on Willoughby Avenue. Well, I didn't, because there were none that I knew of. Okay, in any case, thank you, Ms. Gilliard. I agree, I second, and thank you.
Thank you. Brian Foster.
Hi, yes. I also want to speak to my experiences with the Willoughby Ave open streets as a resident of Willoughby Walk. I'm actually using the open street right now. And I've seen in the 2 blocks I've walked down the street so far, I've seen more than 30 people, both on their bikes and also walking like me. I am a daily user of the open street myself, both to go to Fort Greene Park, this the entire length of the street from Hall to the park itself, and to commute to and from work. I commute on my bicycle. So as somebody who doesn't own a car, this is by far the most valuable street to me in my neighborhood. And it's a significantly high priority for me to.
We're having trouble hearing you. There's wind in your, speak louder, please.
Yes, sorry. Like I said, I'm walking down the street right now, actually. So a little bit of wind, hopefully no rain. But yes, I just want to speak out and say I disagree with the representations that the street is not used. I'm seeing a lot of people on it right now as we speak, and I myself use it every day. So it's valuable to me both as a resident of the district and as a commuter down to Manhattan on my bicycle. So short trips and long trips both.
Thank you, Brian. Sam Anderson.
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to speak in support of the Willoughby Avenue open street, as well as the Gates Avenue proposed plaza. For Willoughby, I too have been an active pedestrian and cyclist on that street and have been using it a lot, seeing lots of community members use it. And I feel that it's been a refuge during the pandemic and ongoing for our community to have open space, to be active, to to get together. And like the mayor said during the Summer Streets ride last Saturday, to open our hearts, open our minds, and open our interactions. With the Plaza at Gates Avenue, this discussion was really prompted by when baby Apolline, who was 3 months old, was killed at that intersection in September of 2021, I believe. And this plaza is not just a plaza, but really adding vital safety infrastructure at a crucial area of our neighborhood where many collisions do happen and will continue to happen if change is not made. Thank you.
Thank you. Kerwin? From, I don't know your last name, Kenwin, excuse me, Kenwin.
You're gonna get that R and that N right at some point, Sydney. Yeah.
You know,
So,
I can't see that clearly.
it's all right. It's an N.
Go ahead.
I want to reiterate what Mr. Darrell Rock and also our representative from Willoughby Avenue Neighbors United have tried to put forward. This isn't the will of the neighborhood. This is the will of young white biker bros, right, who have moved into a neighborhood that was once actually very diverse before a number of gentrification-based displacements, right? And you are trying to define the community instead of being part of the community, okay? I've lived here my entire life. I'm 38. I live on Willoughby, right? You didn't ring any doorbells. You didn't slip any notes on any doors. You talked amongst yourselves about how much you didn't like cars and how much you wanted Willoughby Avenue closed down. And you're doing the same thing with Gates and Vanderbilt, using the death of a child as propaganda in order to make permanent change in front of people's homes. It's disrespectful, and it's exactly what Black people are always talking about in this city and in this borough, right? You move in, right? You see a neighborhood, and all of a sudden, you want to tell us how to live because we don't know better, right? We don't know better. You'll show us the right way, right? And you'll do whatever it takes, whether it's bias surveys with the DOT or
30 seconds, Kenwin.
yeah, all right. Well, that's it. I can't say anything more that hasn't already been said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kenman, this is the secretary. Can I have your last name, please?
Last name Nicom, Nicome. I live at 130 Willoughby Avenue, and I've lived here my entire life.
Thank you.
Vilmanette Montgomery, and since there's only 3 more people, I will call the other 3 people. But Vilmanette Montgomery first, our former state senator. Neil, you're not going to get called. I closed the call. I've closed it. 3 more people after you. Neil will not be one of them. Vilmanette?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Vilmanette. Go ahead.
Thank you for recognizing me. And I just want to associate also my comments and my thoughts with Dolores Gilliard. She is one of my neighbors, as well as the young man who just spoke, Kenwin, and Darrell Rock. I feel that our neighborhood, our street has been appropriated without any consultation with the people who actually live and have lived on that street for many years. I live on Willoughby Avenue, and those of us who live on that street have appreciated the fact that we share our community with a major higher ed institution, with several churches. We have neighbors, we have several large apartment developments, Clinton Hill, Willoughby Walk. This is a very diverse area. So if there are going to be changes to our street, it seems to me the respectful thing for government to do is to make sure that we're all included and we have a voice in whatever those decisions are. That's always been my philosophy, certainly as a servant of the people who elected me, and I would hope to receive the same level of respect in terms of my being a citizen, along with all of my neighbors, that I should be able to share in whatever that street, whatever the needs are of the community, and that street is part of the needs of all of us. So to have it only for people who are walking and cyclists, by the way, who absolutely do not honor any rules of the road. We have absolutely a horrible situation with cyclists. I see them so much more now that I'm here every day, all day. So I just think that there's a level of respect and regard for the citizens who live here. We pay taxes too. And it seems to me that especially as the community board reflects all of us, I hope that the community board will direct Department of Transportation to create a situation where we all can enjoy the benefit of Willoughby Avenue in particular.
Thank you, Vilmanette. I appreciate it, but I'm have to move on. James Ballantyne, or Ballantine, whichever pronunciation you prefer.
Valentine, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, I've lived here for over a decade and I'm in favor of the Gates Avenue Plaza and the Willoughby Open Street. I think the city needs more public space given how many people don't have backyards and don't even own cars and need space, that isn't right next to speeding cars like sidewalks. For those worried about noise, I think that cars are generally a far bigger problem for noise than bikes and motorcycles. I think, people can already hang out on sidewalks making noise as it is. For people saying that the surveys are unrepresentative, I don't know I don't know if there's been polling that has been more accurate, but I don't see how that is less, I don't see how the survey is less representative than than people who are able to attend these meetings, considering that many people are not able to attend these kinds of meetings.
30 seconds.
I see people enjoying these spaces and having a place to walk and relax, I would get more of them. I see when I go and use Willoughby every day, I see people walking dogs, children riding bikes, people smiling. And I know people love it and enjoy it. And I know that Plaza would also get similar love.
Finish up. You got 5 seconds left.
Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you. Rosalind Hubener. Rosalind or Rosalind. And I apologize for any mispronunciation of names. Gad, you're unmuted, Rosalind.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's Rosalind. A comment on the last speaker. Sidewalks are not next to speeding cars. There is parking in between stationary cars. And if the street were reopened, the bicycles have always been on Willoughby. It's not a heavily trafficked two-way street, and there's a bike lane there. I travel to and from Willoughby sometimes several times a day, and I take photographs when I get there and sometimes when I leave. And just today I left at 5:11, and there was one family walking from the park down as far as I could see, which I guess is down to Washington. There was one family on the street, and they could have easily fit on the sidewalk. And during the day, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even on a Saturday, there's virtually no one on the street unless there's an event. Sunday morning.
1 minute.
Sunday morning, there were people on the street, and by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, they weren't there. So just my observations. We should reopen Willoughby. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat Barrett. And Pat's going to be the last public comment. Pat, you need to unmute. You need to be unmuted.
Hi,
Okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
I am with the North Oxford Street Block Association, although I'm speaking for myself. I am one of the white people who have changed the demographics in this neighborhood. I know it used to be 20% or 40% Black and is now just 20%. And I know that I agree with speakers who talk about how white people show up and change things without asking for people who've been in the neighborhood for a long time input. And this is sort of like a small scale form of colonization in a way. At the same time, I am a biker and a walker. I don't own a car. 80% of New Yorkers don't own a car. I would like to
1 minute.
Okay, that bikes don't kill people, cars, especially SUVs, kill people. So there's a reason that bikes don't always follow the same traffic rules as cars. It seems like, they're out there with people and can communicate with pedestrians. I'd like to propose there's compromise solutions such as part-time opening Willoughby and part-time making it a through street. I think also on gates, what if instead of a plaza right there, it was parking? I think probably a lot of people are mostly afraid they're going to lose parking. I think that intersection looks like, just on a map, it looks unnecessary halfway in a small block. Like it adds, a new car entering traffic.
10 seconds.
Could be used as a parking lot for the members of the co-op there. I think that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Pat. We're now going to go and go to the DOT Willoughby Avenue Open Street presentation. And Commissioner Bray, I hope you're still there.
I am still there, Sid. Thank you. And I'm happy. Thanks for all the comments we heard earlier, and I appreciate them. And I do want to say before I turn over to Kyle Gorman, who is going to be giving the presentation tonight, that we have heard you. And obviously there's going to be more discussion moving forward on both topics that were brought up tonight, Willoughby and Gates. So with that, Cal, bring it up.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen, but actually Emily Weidenhoff is going to kick us off today. So Emily, take it away.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. A bit of background on Willoughby Avenue. If we go to the next slide, the Open Street program generally was created and launched as a pandemic response during COVID-19, really aimed at providing people more safe space during the pandemic, but we saw a tremendous amount of success and continued evolved community use of streets as public spaces. And ultimately, the Open Street program was made permanent via local law back in May of last year.
Emily, we've been through this before. What this was supposed to be was on the neighborhood survey finding. And I don't mean to cut you off, but we've heard this. The committee is well aware of all of this. And what we were here today was to hear the neighborhood survey findings. And I would hope that, and I apologize for interrupting you, I would hope that you would get right into that, please.
I'll move super quickly. Next slide. So Willoughby Avenue started off with the barricades. Our program overall is geared towards moving beyond the barricades. We all recognize they're a very imperfect tool for managing our streets. Next slide. We have seen over the course of the Willoughby Avenue Open Street, really this corridor standing out as a ped and bike priority corridor. That's a big link to and from the park. And so we see a lot of strollers, cycling, and joggers in addition to people walking. With that, we'll get into the survey slides and results, which took place after we added a few additional traffic calming treatments to the street.
Great. So just talking about the survey that we facilitated back in the spring, it was promoted via signage, through the community board, social media, newsletter, email blasts, and sort of just the grassroots level of promotion. We were also able to engage with our public engagement unit at the city's DOT to do some on-street outreach for folks who prefer to have a conversation with us directly. The sites that are listed on the screen were where we were able to pop up in April. This is an event that we did. Great time, Willoughby WAG. So jumping right into the survey results, the vast majority of the folks who took this survey, again, in spring 2022, since some folks had taken the one previously that we had offered, but still time again, we saw that the majority of folks who took the survey live in the neighborhood, but they also have diverse other types of connections in the neighborhood, such as supporting businesses nearby, visiting family and friends. They work in the neighborhood. They're just picking up or dropping off from school, visiting medical facilities, so on and so forth. There's a lot of diverse uses that we're seeing in the use of the streets and how people indicated their connection to the Willoughby Ave open street. So in terms of the types of transportation that folks are using when they're on the Willoughby Ave open street, the vast majority of folks are either walking or biking. But of course, there's also people who indicate that they're using their personal vehicle, they're using taxis or other for-hire vehicles like Uber, Lyft, so on and so forth. There may be dropped off using other types of rideshare, and about 1% of folks indicated that they did rely on assessor ride services. Something to also note is that even if you do drive or rely on an Uber or other type of transportation like the bus or train, at one point in your journey, you're also a pedestrian. So folks are typically linking different types of transportation when they're going from place to place, but the vast majority of folks who are using Willoughby Ave are either walking or biking, like I mentioned. So we asked folks, are they visiting the open street on Willoughby Ave more frequently since we implemented the traffic calming measures in December 2021? About 68% of folks said that yes, they are visiting more frequently. 20% said no, they're visiting just as much as they did before, and 12% said that they actually now visit less. So the majority in this case are also now visiting this open street more often. We also asked folks, do they feel safer walking or biking on the Willoughby Ave open street since we were able to implement these traffic calming measures in December? Nearly 3/4 of the folks who took this survey, which was 2,000 responses, like I had mentioned at the top of the conversation, said that yes, they did feel safer since the traffic calming measures were implemented on Willoughby Avenue. So people generally are just feeling a lot safer while they're using Willoughby Ave as they go about their day-to-day lives. Just pulling out some comments, since there were nearly thousands of comments that were solicited via the survey. A lot of folks were just highlighting the safety it brings to people who are walking, biking, or running, as well as creating a safer route for connection to schools. There's a huge desire to make our streets and adjacent to school as safe as possible. So some folks who are connected to the PS20 community touted the benefits that come along with having the open street there. At the same time, though, there were some areas for improvement and other types of comments that we did receive about, looking to maybe reduce the number of signs and improving some communication strategies overall, as well as some of the things that we heard before during the public comment period about the sort of, changes in behavior that and how it affects drivers as they're driving on the open street. So that really highlights the survey feedback that we were able to offer. So yeah, we have other slides, but I defer to you if you would prefer.
The one question I have is, I know that the DOT upgraded the signage on their website. Has the signage been upgraded on Willoughby?
So the signage that currently is on the barriers and the planters on Willoughby Ave, they do not enter except pedestrians, cyclists, and local vehicles. And that is also now updated on our website as well. Willoughby was actually one of the first sites in the city to receive that specific signage.
Okay, Juliet, you have a question?
Okay, it just took me a minute to unmute and I cannot turn on my video, but that's okay. So I think the signage is actually not all there yet. I just went by this afternoon before coming to the meeting, and there's a sign that says pedestrians, cyclists, and local deliveries only, not just local vehicles only. So I think that part of the problem with Willoughby Avenue is that the signage has been inaccurate throughout its use. In the beginning, people didn't even know that they could use their vehicles if they were local traffic on that street. So I think clarifying the signage would be very important to its use.
And sorry,
So
Sid,
I think there's still a little bit more work there.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, one other thing that I wanted to make sure that everyone on the call knows is that today, actually, we were able to reduce the number of yellow share the road 5 mph signs that are on Willoughby Ave. So you might have noticed that there actually now are significantly less signs overall, which is a comment that we directly responded to rather quickly. I will definitely do a sweep of the corridor to make sure that the local vehicles specific item is addressed on the barriers.
Thank you.
And included.
Ken, we are not accepting questions from the public here. If you want to put your question in the chat, we may respond to it, we may not. The only people who can ask questions at this point are committee members. Patrick, you're next.
Okay, there we go. I had a couple of clarifications to ask Kyle or the other DOT folks.
Go ahead.
In terms of the survey, obviously you might have kind of like a more responses from people walking around. It's easier to reach them. Can you describe for us how you essentially got inside people's doors who, as they said in the survey, they don't use it, they're out there less frequently? How you got into, drivers who might be less accessible than those walking around, just basically how you basically tried. I'm sure you couldn't get a perfect sample, but how you improve the quality of your sample.
Right. I mean, effectively, the street is the public realm, and we were hanging signs on different types of infrastructure, such as streetlights, the barriers that are out there, parking rails, things like that. So these are things that, granted, if people leave their homes, we're expecting that they see them. They were also, shared via the community board, which has a huge network that people are tapped into. We also relied, of course, on the council member and other elected officials to do outreach on our behalf. So we really tried to do our due diligence with making sure that this was, as many eyes as possible could see it. We got about, I would say, about 600 more responses in this survey than we got in the one in 2021.
So you allowed people to submit responses online or some without meeting them in the street, say?
Well, we did do a pedestrian intercept survey.
So if I were there and I saw the sign, I couldn't go online and submit a response?
No, you could as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's part of the numbers.
Hey, Patrick, ask your next question.
Can I ask one other question? Just
make it quick.
Can ADA vehicles, and in fact, do ADA vehicles go past the gates and get to the front doors of clients?
Yes, anyone who has any need to get on the block, whether that be folks who rely on accessoride, people who are getting picked up or dropped off by others, or people who drive their own car, are able to drive on the street. It is a limited local access open street, so that means that local pickups, drop-offs, parking. I was literally just on Willoughby this afternoon when the signs were coming down, and I noticed the hundreds of cars that are parked on Willoughby Avenue. So it's clear that folks are definitely aware that they can access these blocks.
Thank you, John. And you weren't here when I read my speech. So I remind you that there's a 2-minute limit for each question, and there may or may not be a second round. So please, John, you're up next, but you have 2 minutes.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted now, John. Go ahead.
Okay. This is John Dew. I live on the corner of Willoughby and Vanderbilt. I knew nothing about this street closing, and I'm on the community board for 20 years. Folks in my building
John,
Don't
get
do-
back. John, this is a question and answer. This is not a discussion.
No,
So
Sid-
ask,
Sid-
either
Sid, I am-
ask, John, either ask a question or move on.
Okay, Sid, I'll deal with this later, but I want to know from DOT. The comment was just made that ADA can access the buildings and houses on Willoughby. Do they have to actually get out of their vehicles and move gates in order to enter the block?
Yeah.
So can you explain how that's fair to the community?
John, there's not explaining that. Move on. We're gonna go to the next person. Go ahead, Esther.
I just want to ask DOT, has there ever been a survey throughout the whole city that didn't come back in the positive? That we love it, we can walk in the street, we love it, because I can't imagine it coming back any other way, since every question is written in a positive. So I just want to know, has any surveys throughout the whole city ever came back and say, we don't want this program?
Okay, John, you're up next.
Crickets.
I heard. John, you're up next. You're still on. Yeah, you're.
Now I am.
Now
Thank
you're
you.
muted. Go ahead, John.
Okay. I want to go sort of follow up on Esther's question about the survey. We've heard several times here and in prior meetings when the survey was discussed as to the inherent bias in the questions. You showed us results on several issues. Were those and with the questions that were on the slide, the exact wording of the questions that were asked?
Yeah,
And how many questions were in the survey?
I believe there were 10, including demographic.
Okay, well, those asked for specific answers rather than opinions, or, well, how many of the other questions asked for opinions that we don't know the text of the questions?
So there were some open-ended questions that people were able to leave comments on. They are very consistent with the survey results that I walked us through just a few minutes ago. It's very difficult for us to obviously visually communicate thousands of comments in a short presentation, but they were reflective of the sort of benefits that people felt that came along with this particular open street. But, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like everything 100% was sunshine and rainbows and there wasn't, areas or issues that people flagged or areas for improvement. But the comments were definitely in line with what the bar graphs and pie charts showed.
And one real quick one, before the survey or after the survey, did you make any specific attempt for outreach to specific large residential or institutional residents of the street, like buildings, people who are in specific co-ops or condos, and ask their boards? Or did you ask the heads or the operating people of any of the institutions about their views about the use of Willoughby Avenue?
Yes, through, I'm sure many people who live in those particular residential complexes are probably on the community boards, email blasts and newsletters, so they were able to receive information in that way, but also through connections that we have through our own network, people were able to typically share them through like listservs that larger residential complexes have. We do not do door-to-door outreach. I'll also be frank. I mean, it's not something that we are typically able to do.
That's too bad.
Sid, I think you're muted. I think we can't hear you.
Sid, I'm done.
Yeah, Thomas, you're not a committee member. You're not going to be able to ask a question. It's only committee members. Shiro, you're up next. Cyril, you have to unmute when you're unmuted. Cyril?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sid. My question has to do with the breadth of your survey. Since surveys really are weighty in these situations, my question is, did you reach out to the local religious institutions in the area? Since in my case, I would think that most of the people who go to those institutions live in the area. Did you reach out to the pastors or any of the other religious people there to get a good answer of your survey?
Yes, we did institutional outreach as well, including religious institutions as well as education.
Could you just?
No. Now we're going to go to Brian. You asked a question. Brian, you're up next. Brian, you have to unmute.
Sorry,
You're unmuted. Go ahead.
we don't have permission to unmute ourselves to some extent.
No, I understand. Ask your question.
You noted that 1,687 survey respondents say that they live nearby. I'm just curious what the total number of people polled was. I just want to get a percentage of respondents who live nearby.
Just 1 second. It was 2,048 responses.
So that would be 82.4% of the people who polled live nearby. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Ernest, you're up next. Remember, these are questions on the survey.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to ask the question of Mr. Gorman that Cyril was about to ask. The name of the institution, the religious institution specifically that DOT reached out to. Who are they?
We could definitely provide a list after the meeting. I know someone spoke about the French-speaking Baptist Church. That was definitely the one that was on the list. I can also, furnish a full list for you tomorrow if you'd like.
I would, yes.
Ernie, you have one more question.
I just are going to respond in the positive. I would be appreciative to get that list. That's all.
Thank you. Nicole?
If I may just respond to a question about the large buildings, if they were surveyed. Willoughby Walk, some flyers were put up in each floor has 2 trash compactor rooms where there's notices put up. The survey was put up there in all the trash compactor rooms, and it was posted in the mail rooms. So those 2 buildings did get those, and it was also sent to the groups. They have a mailing list.
Thank you, Nicole. Sandy, you're next.
Did I do it?
Yeah, you're on. Remember, this is a question period.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to make a question here because this is very disturbing to me about how DOT does things.
No, if it's a question about this,
ask a question.
Excuse me. You can comment later on when we have a motion. If you want to ask a question, specifically ask a question.
Okay, I'm going to try this as a question. Why can't DOT figure out how to survey the residents? You say you don't ring doorbells. Did you hear me?
Yeah, they don't
I
have.
heard. I don't have an answer. I mean, yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
John, do you want to answer ask one more question? Or do you want to hold it until we have the debate on the issue? John, do. Okay, hearing none. So ask your question.
I'm sorry, Sid. Yes. Did you get a response from all of the emergency services, police, fire, and ambulance, EMS? How do they react? How much time wasted after they arrive and cannot get to the front of the building until the gates are removed?
So as with all the work that we do at the DOT, we work in close coordination with our emergency service providers at the police department and the fire department. Were any issues to come up, they would have definitely flagged them with us, as they have with many other open streets around the city. So we're in constant communication with them.
Thank you. At this point, the presentation, unless Commissioner Bray, you have something further do you want to add? We're going to go to whether or not there's going to be a motion made. Commissioner Bray, do you want to say something?
Nothing else to add, Chair Meyer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Juliet, I recognize Juliet for a motion. Juliet, you wish to make a motion? You're unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Before making the motion, I just want to recognize that this is a very contentious issue that has, in part, been contentious because of the lack of outreach of DOT, which it's tried to improve recently with this survey. So I think that's very good that it did do the outreach to the local institutions. It did do the outreach to many of the larger local residential complexes. I think basically we live in a community where there are a lot of diverging opinions about how to use the public space. So I would like to make a compromise proposal that recognizes that. So I would like to motion to support the open street on Willoughby Avenue, but motion that it be restricted to the normal open street hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. instead of being 24/7, that the signage be consistent and accurate, and that the last stretch of the open street between Washington and Hall be removed because that has been noted as being the most onerous in the community.
So let me repeat the motion. The motion is to approve the open street on Willoughby from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and to run it from Washington, I believe it's Washington Park to Washington Avenue?
Yes.
Is that correct? Is there a second? Is there a second?
I second.
John Quint has seconded the motion. The motion is now open for discussion. Please raise your hand. Ernie.
I'm opposed to the motion, and I think and that Willoughby Avenue should be reopened. The reason I say this is because in order to have a motion like that, if the city of New York violated the city charter, circumvented the community board, and developed these open streets, that's not a compromise. You know, a compromise would have been realistically if the city had undertaken a proper land use review, filed the appropriate ULIP application, submitted it to the board, so we can look at the implication of the change of public space. These are land use issues. And that I just trying to explain something. So in that process, you can negotiate and compromise because you're addressing mitigations. What Julia just proposed was a mitigation. You know, clear and simple. It would be the normal process of a ULIP application. How do you address impact? Julia Collin-Tron said, here's an impact that is negative, and let's mitigate it by rolling back 1 or 2 blocks. That's the normal process. That does not happen. What we got was extortion. You either take it or not. The thing about Willoughby Open Street, the only people that knew about it, because this was a political machination. They could not get it to the board. And so the way to do it was to line up with DOT partnership. They call themselves the community. And who's the partners for DOT? The bids and TA. I saw cars.
Ernie, your 2 minutes are up.
Okay, Sid, but that's fine. I'm
Your
opposed
2
to that
minutes
motion.
are up.
Okay, Sid, I heard you. I'm opposed to the motion.
Nicole?
Oh.
ahead, Nicole.
Okay, yeah, sorry, the mute. I honestly, I'm like kind of at a loss here. Like I think the motion is a fine compromise. I would prefer the whole thing. But you know, I thought Juliet was coming with, you know, this is the mayor, also reminder, this is the mayor's program. This wasn't a biker bro program. This wasn't formed out of like some idea of some people. It was Bill de Blasio. It was signed into law under Bill de Blasio. So let's get that clear. If you want to go over like the process, you know, I don't know like what was missing, but it's the mayor's program. I think Juliet had made a fine compromise. I would support, I live right off the end of the Hall Street one in Willoughby Walk, you know, where I would love to see it stay, but I know that some people don't want to drive all the way around and spend 6 more minutes in their car to park right in front of their building, but that's fine. Happy to say that as a compromise. But if it's not going to come, if the board still is going to say here, no, 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 all or nothing, I don't know what to say. It's a popular program. It's the mayor's program. A lot of people like it. Like what are we doing here? I just don't know what we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. John, 2 minutes.
Is this John Doe?
Yes, John.
Oh, okay. Again, I live on Willoughby Avenue. My building with 112 apartments was not consulted. We have a huge backyard. No family from this building, the only building on the block, will ever have to be on Willoughby Avenue because they will take their family to the backyard behind the building. Why was Willoughby Avenue between Vanderbilt and Clinton included when the building has its own backyard? So I think, Sid, the community was not fully heard here. The folks that were most impacted were not heard. The folks on Myrtle Avenue and the other blocks that are getting this additional traffic have not been heard, consulted. They are having impacts that are negative. So I think the community board has to represent the community, not the community of folk who want to come in and bike and walk in the middle of the street. Because if that's the case, we should close off every block in the city of New York and become a walk bike city only. If you start selecting blocks based on what criteria? I have not seen any criteria that represents what is necessary to put a block like Willoughby Avenue, several blocks closed off. Where does this come from? Who's decided that Willoughby Avenue, and who are these folk that can submit applications to close off a block? How democratic is that, Sid?
Okay,
Where
John,
does this come from?
John.
You know, I could go on all night, but
I
I'll
know,
stop
that's why
there,
I'm
Sid.
stopping you. John Quinn, please.
Thank you, Sid. I support Juliet's motion. The whole process from the first time we heard about it to even tonight stinks. I think DOT did this wrong. They listened to people who they didn't seek to find out that they truly represented anybody. But the fact is that we have to live with what it is. And first, Ernie's position on ULURP. This is not ULURP. This is something that the city is doing. They own the streets. They can do whatever they want with the streets. They're not changing any building or land use. The streets are always whatever the city says they are. They can take off streets, they can add streets. So I think that's a red herring, that the process is wrong. The fact is that the open streets, many people like them. They are successful. And of course, if you live on the street and it doesn't suit you, well, you know, then it's the worst thing in the world.
30 seconds.
But the fact is, any other parallel street, the same result will be. Willoughby Avenue is already an open street, but I don't like that it's 24 hours. I don't like that the signage is bad. And I don't like that Pratt and that further east of Washington is impacted. So I support Julia's compromise. That's why I seconded it.
Patrick? I have to wait until you unmute. Yeah, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Patrick.
Me? Okay. So I I guess I'll just say, I support Juliet's proposal, although I wanted to ask about the segment to hall and also comment on ADA. One is, but I'm less amenable, I will say. I'm less sympathetic to the democracy arguments. DOT manages the city streets as, you know, which go through as a network throughout the city, and they have to make decisions. And COVID was a big challenge, and I think they did some amazing stuff with that. So that's my opinion. I do think communication is really important, and I think tonight's meeting is I guess, perhaps as Juliet said, like a sign that said that there's a really big effort being made. And I think more and more effort has to be made in that respect to reach out and hear from people. I'm okay with the shortened hours because I don't think, you know, I think the
10 more seconds. Finish
got
up.
it. Okay. All right. So I would just like to see the hall segment, just to understand why that's would be cut out. Or what the specific argument against it is. And on ADA, that DOT speak directly to the ADA service to make sure that
They're
people
not going
are.
to speak. They're not speaking anymore. We're doing what we're doing now.
Okay.
Brian, I'm going to call on you next, and then I'm going to call on Esther after that. Brian, how? Brian, I know you're trying to unmute. I understand. I'm waiting. There you go.
You know, when the city did construction outside of my parents' house on a water tunnel, they didn't ask their permission. When they put in a left turn signal on the intersection closest to where my grandmother lives, they didn't ask anyone's permission. When they tore down all the homes on Park Avenue and put up the BQE, they didn't ask anyone's permission. The city makes decisions all the time, and almost none of them go through community review, because you cannot have a city where 125,000 people in the community district have to render their opinion on every topic. It just reminds me of my favorite New Yorker cartoon. There's a guy, the phone, you know, no, Thursday is no good, never, how about never? We say DOT doesn't listen. DOT isn't represented. They go out and they do this survey where they ask people, where they find out that 82.4% of people live in the area. Most people are supportive. And then people are like, well, I still don't like it. And it's like, okay, well, you have every right not to like it, but there is no amount of support that DOT could have found here that people would have found sufficient. Let's not pretend that this is anything other than people saying, I don't like it. If I don't like it, why should it be there? To make DOT have to jump through 7 million hoops in the end, say, well, DOT, why didn't you just do better? Come on, like, why are we putting DOT through this preposterous exercise where we claim that, you know, there is something that they could have done that people would have found sufficient? Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Esther, I'm going to hold on you for a second, but I'm going to call on Sarah because I want you to hit the last word as the vice chair, unless you want to speak now, whichever you prefer.
It's okay.
Sarah, Sandy, I'm not adding any more people. Sandy, you're too late at this point. It's just going to be Sarah, and then I'm going to allow Esther to finish, and then we're going to move the question. Go ahead, Sandy.
You said Sandy or Sarah?
I meant Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Sid. I think what Juliet said is quite a good compromise. Under the circumstances, we understand that DOT is here to open streets are a fact of life. I think that communications can be improved. However, I do support her motion.
Thank you. Esther, you'll get the last word before I move the question to a vote. And it will be a roll call vote.
Juliet's motion is nice. It's hard for me. I don't know if I'm going to support it. I really don't. I mean, you know, DOT says that they contact the community by the surveys. The surveys are bogus, but yet we use them like they the gospel. You cannot say no on those. Everything is going to lead to the positive. but yet we have to go. That's how they doing the outreach. That's what they always say. We did outreach. We did these surveys, bogus surveys. It's it's election fraud or something. I don't know. So it would be hard for me to support this. I want to help the people that live in Willoughby Walk so they can get in their garages or parking lots, and the people for Pratt. So I need to hear the motion again, and I'll make a decision. But I don't know why we are the people who always have to compromise. We are the people who always have to compromise. When we presented, this community board presented to DOT how they could do bike lanes near the Farragut projects and have a bike lane and keep the parking, they said no. They don't compromise, but we always gotta compromise. The Black community always have to compromise. I'm finished.
Okay, thank you, Esther. John, can you read back the motion and then call the roll? No, you're still on mute. You're still on mute. Now you're on mute.
Sorry, got it. The motion is to support the Willoughby Avenue open streets with the following changes. Restrict its use to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Make the signage consistent and accurate, and remove the block between Washington and Hall from the open streets program.
John, will you please call the roll?
Okay, now, how would you like me? You want me to do it alphabetically or?
As long as you call me last.
Okay, then I'm gonna take all the committee members and then do the rest, the secretary, then the vice chair, then the chair. All right. Mr. Augustus.
No.
Ms. Balboza. Sandy, unmute. All committee members unmute so we can do it quickly. I think Taya has to unmute you, so that's the problem.
I think
you're unmuted.
All right, Sandy, how do you vote?
Well, I wasn't allowed to speak. I'm going to have to vote no.
Ms. Cullen Chung.
Yes.
Mr. Du.
Muted. No.
Hear you?
No.
Ms. Gelbs.
Yes.
Did Kate Gilman come on? She's the only one who I didn't see. Is Kate here?
No.
Apparently not.
Ms. Gilman had to step away.
Was she on though?
She was on previously. She had to step away for a family emergency.
Okay, Mr. Howell.
No.
Mr. Kalaki.
Yes.
Ms. Murray.
Yes.
Mr. Scala.
Yes.
I'm next. I vote yes. Ms. Blunt.
John, you're mute, Esther.
No.
Ms. Cullen Chung. No, I'm sorry. Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Passes 7-5.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the pedestrian plaza on Gates Avenue and the shared street proposal. I'm going to take the chair's discretion to split those into two votes. Is there a motion on the pedestrian plaza? Patrick, is there a motion on the pedestrian plaza?
I'm sorry. Yes. I make a motion to approve the pedestrian plaza.
Is there a second?
Wait, Sid, can you explain what's the two votes?
There's two votes. One is for the pedestrian plaza, the plaza for the girl who was killed.
Yeah, yes, what's the other one?
And the shared street, which is the newer proposal.
Okay.
The newer proposal. So this is there a second? Is there a second?
I'm sorry, one more time. Is this because it was updated?
No, this is, yes, because it was updated because we're in a little, but right now it's the proposal right now, the motion is just on the pedestrian plaza for the little girl who was killed. Whose name I should know, but I don't. Is there a second?
Apolline was the name.
Apolline. Is there a second?
I'll second.
John Quinn seconds. Is there any discussion? I see Ernie Augustus's hand up. Ernie, if you're unmuted, go right ahead.
I'm going to urge this committee to please vote no. There is no correlation between having a plaza and the death of Abilene. There is something utterly insidious about the proposal. It does not address the issue of traffic safety. I raised concern. There were several issues that was laid out that the Society for Clinton Hill and the Fort Greene Association and CRNP submitted to the board opposing this, and it cited several reasons. One, there was no connection between the death of that baby and this plaza. Second, there was it is a gratuitous taking away of public spacing. And second, it impacts the neighborhood. The people who live in that development, that is a residential block. And I'll talk about land use. It is zoned as a residential block, and the parents filed their lawsuit. And I know TA had taken exception, but they're in court. They identified 4 defendants. The driver, who's being prosecuted. They identified DOT. They identified the Department of Design and Construction. And finally, the police department. The community of Fort Greene Clinton Hill is not a defendant in their lawsuit because there's a reason why.
Ernie, please finish up.
And the plaza doesn't make any sense because what does toddlers have
Ernie, please finish up.
I'm gonna finish. Let me finish. Please sit. This is very, very important. It's not a playground. Toddlers go to parks and playground. They don't go to plazas. You haven't seen a design for toddlers in that plaza, and plaza become a public nuisance. What is it so difficult to understand?
Okay, Ernie, you're finished now.
I'm finished.
You're finished now. Juliet.
Thank you. I think we need to improve the safety of that street. We need traffic calming measures. I liked the neck downs, bulb outs, whatever you call them.
Right now, we're just talking about the plaza.
But I don't think that we should go forward with the plaza. I think we heard enough from the community that because this is a residential street, because it is not a commercial street like many of the other public plazas, people do not want the gatherings right in front of their street. So I would support other measures, but not a plaza.
Patrick?
Okay, so I definitely think that the reconfiguration to create the plaza improves the safety of the street. I find in general that the diagonals, non-right angle intersections of the streets along that whole stretch, along Fulton, are confusing and increase the probability of accidents. So I like it in that respect. And then Mr. Darrell Rock spoke about so here too, I'm not really amenable to the democracy argument. I think, DOT is trying to create open spaces, which is sort of something that people need. Mr. Rock spoke about rats and noise and litter, and that is obviously a very important issue, especially when you're living right above it. So I would think that there are ways of better managing the change so that so that those negative things are not present or controlled. And that's it.
Sandy, you're unmuted, so you can speak right away.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, I agree with Juliet. I don't think the plaza, it should be made into a plaza gates. I think traffic calming can calm the traffic, although the accident was a reckless driver going the wrong way, I believe. And I just it's upsetting that the residents would have to deal with the situation of a plaza in front of their windows.
Okay. Quint, you're next, followed by Nicole.
I seconded the motion to get it before the board, but I'm not in favor of it. I think that there already is open space that existed, that we spent a lot of time on dealing with, the parkland that's right across the street. I think that the street can be improved to help traffic move probably by putting more parking there so that everybody has to go slow. But I don't think that there's any value to adding a space that will be disruptive to a residential block. And I've heard at prior meetings or this meeting, all of those things about the disruption to the neighbors in that, I think it was 40-family building. And I don't think it would be a good idea to permanently close it so that it does not have traffic flowing and therefore turn it over to disruptive use.
Oh, you're next, and then followed by Brian.
Yes, aren't there already 4 benches right in front of the building in question? I'm looking at Google Maps. I don't go there that much, but there appears to be right across from the park and right next to the building 4 park benches already. And from what I remember from the presentation, the additional seating would be folded up at night. Maybe Keith or somebody can correct me or confirm, but it looks like there's already seating there, so I'm confused as to
There is 4 benches there that was put there because you have to remember this block was already revamped under Vision Zero. So we already spent our tax dollars on this block. Those 4 benches and a plaza are 2 different things. Plazas, the bids always have entertainment. It's not just in the night that you fold the chairs up. You have entertainment, they have loud music. Look at Foley Plaza down the block on Fulton Street. So it's not
if it's a residential street, do we know that
it's not a commercial corridor.
Am I going to get yelled at by the chair or the co-chair?
No, I wasn't yelling at the chair. I'm just one at a time.
No.
Okay.
I feel like I'm getting yelled at.
Go ahead, Nicole.
So yeah, I mean, are there any other examples throughout the city of a plaza that's been put in a residential area? Because I could see, like, yeah, if it's not by a commercial street, you would expect a lot of noise, a lot of, food or whatever else. But if there are other examples of plazas in residential areas, and if they are noisy or whatever, I think we should compare that, use that, and not plazas that are in commercial areas, which will, of course, be having a lot more activity.
Brian, did you speak already?
I did not.
Okay, go ahead.
John Dew is very fond of saying we need, neighborhood-wide or citywide planning, that we need to look at all the issues together, that we don't get enough resources on the aggregate. And yet, when we talk about traffic violence, it's never that these are product of decisions made by DOT. Well, it was this driver who did it for this reason and that driver. The same people who often claim that, the city needs to do this comprehensive planning are often the same people who say, well, this crash is this set of factors and this crash is that set of factors. And the failure to see these things as a product of decisions that the city makes when it comes to traffic planning is really sort of baffling for people who understand the need to see these decisions at a higher level for so many other things. But to Nicole's point, we have several other interruptions to the street grid along Fulton. We have Collier Gore Park. We have the new plaza that was created at Grand in Fulton, though that one is a little bit more commercial. But Collier Gore Park is in a residential area and cuts off the street grid just the same. I just to give you an example of what Nicole was talking about. But I want this point to be clear that no change, half block or not, will be small enough.
All right, thank you, Brian. I'm going to call on, there's John Dew, John, have you spoken on this one yet? I don't think so. And Ciro. So Ciro, John and Ciro, and Ernie, I will allow you another minute since there's only 2 more to go. John,
Yes.
go ahead.
Sid, this is
John Dew.
the community board.
Yes. John, we're having trouble hearing you.
Community board. Do you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Go ahead.
Okay. Sid, we're a community board. The local community that is most impacted by this plaza, if it were to happen, has spoken.
Okay.
They said they are not in favor of the plaza. The community board does not represent the entire city. And you can always find one instance where something works and you can't apply it everywhere. The community board represents the local community. We have to go with the concerns of the local community. The vote should be no for this.
Well, your vote's going to be no. We'll see what everyone's vote is in a little while. Ciro, go ahead.
I think this is a very bad idea. And I do think that just quoting when there are park benches in one area and park benches in another area or plaza somewhere else doesn't have any meaning or basis for this particular area. This was maybe a bad idea for probably trying to make for a good reason in a way, but they didn't handle it well. And the community does not want it. And I think the community board should be the voice of the community and vote against it.
Okay, thank you. Ernie, you're the last voice before we take the vote.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say is Collier Park is a park. You know, but I'm a new grandfather. I have a 2-year-old grandson. People who have toddlers, and Julia had toddlers at home, they go to parks. They go to parks. They don't go to plazas. We've heard parks are designed specifically, and there's a very well developed toddlers park on Underhill and Prospect Place. If you could take time to go up there and take a look at it, you'll see how toddlers behave. They don't go to plazas to run and to interact. DOT is not Parks Department. I have an open space.
Ernie,
okay, but that's it. That's my point, Sid.
Thank you. John, the question is called. You call the roll, please, and repeat the motion, please.
Well, the motion was simply to approve the pedestrian plaza on gates between Vanderbilt and Fulton. Is that the right?
Yes.
Right. The curved portion of the curved end of gates between Vanderbilt and Fulton.
Vanderbilt and Claremont.
No.
No.
We're not talking about Vanderbilt.
Oh, and Fulton. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick, is your motion. Okay, we're going to do it in the same order.
Yes.
Mr. Augustus.
No.
Ms. Balboza.
No.
Ms. Cullen Chung.
No.
Mr. Dew. Unmute yourself, John.
Absolutely no.
Counts as a no. Ms. Gelds. Cheryl?
She abstained.
Did Kate Gilman come back?
I don't think so.
All right, Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mr. Kalaki,
Yes.
Miss Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Scala,
No.
Mr. Quint votes no. Ms. Blount,
No.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Seven, four, one.
Thank you. The
Defeated,
next,
defeated, 741.
I'm aware. The next one is the shared street proposal, which is now in front of you. And this is a modification from the original one. It takes away less parking. It takes away, I think, 9 parking spaces, additional parking spaces. All right, is there a motion to either approve or reject this?
I make a motion to reject it. I disapprove, to disapprove.
Okay, so the motion is made by Ernie Augustus. Is there a second?
Sorry, question. It's been changed. So again, are we voting on the change or the whole thing?
We're voting on the shared street proposal as it currently exists with the changes on what is this? Gates between Vanderbilt and what? What's the other?
Clinton.
Vanderbilt and Clinton. Is there a second to the do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes, if anybody from the Transportation Committee will make a site visit to Fulton Street and come up to Clinton Hill Port Green, you will see bike corral going from Adelphi to Claremont along Fulton Street. You go up, you'll see bike corral from Waverly to Washington Avenue. You'll see bike corrals going up and down Fulton Street. I mean, we are overrepresented with bike corrals. I don't see how this comes up. I appreciate the fact, I do appreciate that they're not going to close or not make Gates Avenue a one-way. You know, I don't know how that morphed to somebody's planning, but I'm appreciative of that. You know, that no, they won't close that. But the rationale for a bike corral is, I mean, you can't walk no more than a block and you'll see it.
Okay, thank you, Ernie. Juliet?
I think this improves pedestrian safety, and at the expense of a couple parking spaces, it's worthwhile. So I would support it and not support the motion.
Okay, Brian?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly the details from DOT, but it looks like we're voting on whether or not to take away 4 parking spaces to shorten a crossing and put in 2 bike corrals. And I really don't think that I don't remember the committee being asked to take action on something so small ever before. So it's seems a little strange to be voting on something so minor, but
It's 9 parking spaces.
9 parking spaces.
Now, they originally were taking 22.
Well, 9, and if it were 1, I imagine that, you know, the opposition would be just as opposed.
Let's disparage your fellow committee members. They didn't do it for you.
I didn't disparage them. I'm just saying what I think they would do, not whether or not that's bad. If we're not gonna ever say that we should take away a parking spot or 4 or 9 or 22 to make pedestrian safety, then I'm curious, you know, why if there is no cost so small that will bear it to make people safer, then why pretend? So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
I also, you know, I like the pedestrian safety part of it. And Taya sent out an email, I guess, whatever it was today, this morning, saying that they've updated the plan.
Yeah, they modified the plan.
It's been adjusted from what we had originally planning to vote on.
Originally much more extensive.
Yeah, and that was in response to community feedback. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to hear about that, but I'm just curious to know if there was some sort of compromise, effort, outreach, whatever, which again, you know, is super important.
We have a motion in front of us. We're going to deal with the motion.
Got it.
Thank you. Next person is John Dew.
Yes, Sid, I'm going to say something that's unfortunate, but clear. This community of color is constantly being put upon for services that remove services from the community of color. This community of color uses cars. They use bikes also. Why can't the bikes and cars be shared? Why do bikes have to displace cars? The folks in this community drive. They're now having to drive around and around and around, polluting the air and creating even more damage and potential pedestrian danger in order to find a parking spot. There are enough parking bikes all over Community Board 2. We don't need to displace bikes in a community of color yet again. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Nicole?
The idea that there are enough bike corrals in this community is belied by the fact that walk outside and you will see bikes tied to fences, tied to trees, which kills the trees. There's nowhere to put them. Instead of, you know, just go outside. Like, no, there's bikes tied up everywhere. Sometimes they're left or they're not, but there's just not enough safe places to put bicycles, and they get put in places that are more dangerous, blocking sidewalks, inappropriate. People are going to ride bikes. You can't stop them. They need places to be put safely and out of the way. And that includes for delivery people as well. Delivery people get their bikes stolen at a very high rate, and there's no safe place to lock them up. We need more bike corrals.
All right, thank you, Nicole. It's Juliet, and Ernie will have the last comment. Juliet, you're not.
Oh, no, sorry. I just didn't lower my hand.
Okay, Ernie, you can have a couple of minutes to make your last comment.
No, I'm not going to belabor the point at this point. There's no need to, the sermonizing, the demonizing is enough for me, for Mr. Howell. The demonization is just a little bit too much. I have a car, I have a bike, I walk, I use mass transit. We have multiple modes, but no one had never demonized bikers. I want to say something, just point out for a fact in terms of the open street partners. The partners is DOT, Transportation Alternative, and the bids. That's how it came about. That's the community, that's the partnership, and that's who made the decision on open street. It wasn't the community. Nobody reached out to the community board. The community board has a list of community organizations that never sent out notices or anything.
All right, as I said, Ernie would have the last statement. I'm taking the question is now called. John, call the roll, please.
All right, and remember, everyone, it's a motion to disapprove. So a yes vote is a disapproval vote. So, because that's how the motion was made. All right, Mr. Augustus.
Yes.
Ms. Balboza.
Yes.
Ms. Cullen Chung.
No.
Mr. Dew.
Yes, disapprove.
Ms. Gelbs, have you returned?
No.
Yes, the answer, that's so. Ms. Gilman has not returned?
No.
No, that was her saying no to the.
I know.
No. That was Ms.
Gelbs
Gelb
voted
saying no.
Ms. Gelbs voted no. I heard that. Now, Ms. Gilman, has she returned?
Ms. Gilman will not be able to return to the meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Howell,
No.
Mr. Kalaki,
No.
Ms. Murray,
No.
Mr. Scala,
No,
Mr. Quint votes no. Ms. Blount,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
No.
Those have it.
So that's 4 in favor, 8 against.
Okay, can I have now a positive motion to approve the shared street proposal? And Juliet made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, and there's not going to be any discussion. We've had the discussion on this. This is a positive motion to approve the latest DOT shared street proposal for gates between Carlton and where's the other one? Between
Vanderbilt.
Clinton. It's
Oh.
gates between Vanderbilt and Clinton.
Between Vanderbilt and Clinton. John, call the roll.
Mr. Augustus,
No.
Ms. Balboza,
No.
Ms. Cullen Chum,
Yes.
Mr. Dew,
No, absolutely no.
Ms. Gelbs,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mr. Kalaki,
Yes.
Ms. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Scala,
yes,
Mr. Quint votes yes. Ms. Blount,
No.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Well, everybody followed suit, so it's 8-4 approved.
I want to thank everyone. I mean, this has been a long time coming, and to those who I may have cut off, I apologize, but I need to try. I was under specific instructions to end this in 2 hours, and even with our disruption before, I think I'm pretty close. So let me do the chairperson's report. One of the things I want to raise is that the MTA has started putting out information on open streets, and they're going to start being not open streets, congestion pricing. All right, and they've begun to do public hearing on congestion pricing. I must tell you that my big concern for congestion pricing for this community is the fact that we do not have residential parking permits. And it's something that I would like to try to get a presentation for the next September meeting to have a discussion of residential parking permits in conjunction with the congestion pricing. I looked at the crime reports for both the 84th and the 88th precincts. Year to date, the 88th precinct is up 26.46%. The 84th precinct is up 32.03%. Now, in both precincts, there has not been a murder this year. Now, which is a drop from, because they both had 84th had 1, and I think 88 had 3 murders, but everything else is up, significantly up. And obviously it's something that we probably need to look at for September and be aware that it's really problematic. As Nicole pointed out, the accidents, the crashes, they're not accidents, they're crashes. So I apologize for making that mistake. The crashes are up significantly, and the police enforcement has been reported citywide down by 50%. And that is really problematic. And you know, the police have showed that they're trying to work on the scooter problem. They're trying to work on the bike problem, but the main problem still is that cars are the ones who have most accidents, and we really need to work on that as well. Is there any other committee business? There's people, Nicole, do you want to say something?
Just wanted to add that the I believe 24/7 speed cameras was recently enacted, I think like a week or two ago. So the speed cameras at school zones used to be off after a certain time.
That's
And
24/7.
yeah, now they're 24/7. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
the big problem is that people with paper plates and a whole bunch of, they
Yeah.
arrested a cop with paper plates and has arrested some MTA people too. So there are a lot of people who are avoiding that and tolls, and it's a real problematic. We'll see if that makes a difference. Ciro, you want to say something?
Yes, and I just wanted to make a comment that when we have our discussions within the community board, I would hope that we treat each other with much more respect. Occasionally, I hear some comments to each other. I think we should just support ourselves civilly.
John?
Sid, DOT should study the impact and the frustration of folks driving cars looking for parking spots as it relates to car accidents.
Okay, noted. Brian?
Yeah, I'm just curious. You said that you wanted to have a conversation next month about residential parking permits. How would you recommend that we prepare to have such a conversation?
Well, I was hoping we would find someone who can make a presentation on it.
Okay.
Someone from us or someone from DOT?
No, I'm not gonna, my wife supported him. I'm not doing it. Not from DOT. I would like to try to get someone independent. DOT in the past has not supported residential parking permits. Sandy?
Yes, I just want to comment on the bikes, scooters, mopeds riding on the sidewalk and city bikes more and more. It's not safe on the sidewalk anymore, and there's no effort to help the situation.
Okay, thank you. Ernie?
Yeah, I just have a question. Can the community board office follow up with Kyle Gorman? He promised to submit a list of the institutions that DOT supposedly reached out to regarding the open street. He named some churches, but I would like, he did commit to providing a list, and I don't know how to follow up. So can the board office follow up, please?
We will figure out a way of following up, Ernie.
Okay, thank you.
John, one more time.
Sid, my final comment is that this was an extremely uncomfortable committee meeting for the community. This was an uncomfortable meeting. And there are some issues that are underlying in the discussion tonight that we will have to bring up at a later date. Extremely uncomfortable meeting.
Thank you. Cheryl, you haven't had a chance. You want to say something?
Yeah, I want to go back to residential parking. You would have to get one of the state senators to address that, because that was brought up years and years and years by Leslie Lewis, and it was always voted down up in Albany. So that has to be something that maybe you have a friend in Albany.
I have a friend in Albany.
Good. So talk there.
Brian?
Yeah, this goes to public safety. There was an article in Bloomberg earlier, or just at the end of last month, called "Fear of Rampant Crime is Derailing New York City's Recovery." That was largely about how crime is somewhat up, but media mentions of crime are up, 300-400%. I was wondering, is that something I could send to the board office for the committee to take a look at?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And is there any community people who would like to make a comment? Hearing, yeah, go ahead, Kenwin.
Yeah, I want to go back to what some community board member mentioned about open streets not being brought on by biker bros. It was, okay. You're on social media. We can see who you like. We can see the things that you post. We know that you're very much in favor of it. And we see the organizations that you support. Now, those organizations never came before the community board. And that's the issue that, for example, Mr. John Dew is talking about. These organizations are operating outside of the structure that we already have. Come before the community board, have some type of dialogue. They're going directly to the DOT, and the DOT is acting like they represent the community. Furthermore, these surveys that you're posting, the same way that this meeting got hijacked by someone hacking a Zoom meeting, that's how these surveys can get hijacked. You post them on the internet, anyone can respond to them and say, yeah, I like open streets because I don't like cars. So yeah, it might bother you a bit that I said biker bros and I used, but it's true. So,
Thank you,
Thank
Ken.
you.
Thank you. Erin Samples?
Yes, good evening, everyone. This is in regards to agenda item 11, just the new business. I sent an email to the board as well as to Commissioner Bray and made some service requests in regards to the bike lane along Flushing Avenue. It's dangerous. I live right at Claremont and Flushing. I use the bus stop that's right in front of the Navy Yard. And I can't even tell you how many times I've seen people crossing the street, almost hit by vehicles in the bike lane, or even just getting off of the bus and, possibly, yes. And, just getting off of the bus and not even knowing it's a bike lane. So I've noticed that at Cumberland and Flushing, as well as North Portland and Flushing, there are traffic signals for bikes. That hopefully can be a consideration. However, I still feel like the bike lanes are intruding on the sidewalk for pedestrians as well as for the buses. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but the bike lane, once it gets to where a bus stop is located, there's cement on the ground. So even stepping off of the bus, you don't even notice it's a bike lane until there's a bike or moped or motorcycle speeding past you. And even just the structure of where it was placed, it's you crossing the street to the Navy Yard, it's the car lanes, a medium, which I'm not sure why that was put there, then the bike lane, then the sidewalk. So it is very problematic. I've spoken to many people. I've made service requests. Like I said, I've emailed the community board as well as Commissioner Bray in regards to this, because everyone of all ages are unaware that these bikes are passing until either someone honks, someone screams. I've never seen bikes, mopeds, motorcycles stop, even with the traffic lights, but at least the traffic lights would be helpful. I'm not sure why they started at Cumberland and not along Flushing between Classen and Navy Street, but hopefully some restructuring or even the traffic lights can be a consideration.
Erin, we'll see if we can get an answer for you from DOT. Rosalind? Rosalind, you have to.
Am I unmuted?
Unmuted, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Your proposal for information about congestive pricing and residential parking permits in September or, in the next season. Can it be kind of an objective presentation, maybe giving both pros and cons so we can really, for those of us who are somewhat unfamiliar, so that we can really understand it from both points of view or any points of view, as informative as possible.
We're trying to find someone to make the presentation, and we'll see what happens when they come and make the presentation. I'm not going to prejudge what the presentation is going to be.
Okay.
We'll try. I appreciate the comment.
Yes, thank you.
Katrina?
Hello, thank you. So I just wanted to tag on. Ms. Dolores actually did say pretty much everything I wanted to say at the beginning of this meeting, but I wanted to add the same thing that Kenwin noted. There were over 800 people that signed a petition against the Willoughby open street, and it hasn't been responded to by DOT or anyone that we sent it to other than Crystal Hudson. So to say that everyone supports this is not correct. I'm not going to say that the survey was fabricated because I can't prove that, but just know there's a lawsuit right now. Amazon is suing Facebook for like 10,000 fake reviews. So when Transportation Alternatives and Kathy Park Price and various other people go on Twitter and Facebook and post these various links and saying, please submit this survey, we'll meet you at Fort Greene Park, please submit this survey. And they're soliciting people that do not live in this neighborhood, which I have lived in since 1997. It's not truthful. I don't believe the survey is fabricated, but I do believe people that don't live here are filling it out, including people I saw at the Willoughby Wags dog event. I talked to those people as they were getting into their Ubers. They don't live here. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Katrina. Brian, you're the last community comment.
I just wanted to say something in support of what Aaron Samples had commented on. Speaking of signage, at North Portland and at North Oxford, right, I'm sorry, I guess this is also for Taya. There are bike lights, and then immediately underneath is a sign saying yield. And those are contradictory things. One doesn't, a yield sign is in place, instead of a traffic signal, not in addition to it. And that creates sort of a confusing situation where it says yield, but also there's a light. It's at the intersection, both the intersections of North Portland and North Oxford and Flushing. So
You write that up and send it in so we can get it.
I have sent it to DOT, so I'm happy to give you the 311 messages that I have 301 request numbers for I sent it. Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Lucy, you're last.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You have 2 minutes.
Yes. Okay, yeah, no, what, a lot of the things that Kyle said about Willoughby Avenue in the survey and also contacting residents, it just wasn't true. The people, as you heard John Dew say, people in Clinton Avenue didn't know, Clinton Hill Co-ops had no information about this. Willoughby Walk did not know about this open street proposal. And of course people feel safer on a street where there's no cars. That's ridiculous. Why would you even say that? But how do the people feel about every other street that has increased congestion? There's no environmental impact statement on these open streets. And that has to be done because every other street has more congestion, more air pollution, and more noise pollution. The sidewalk, as you saw in the pictures, the sidewalk's empty. Like, that's not necessary. People don't have to walk in the middle of the street. They can walk on the sidewalk. So, it's a very dishonest presentation that Kyle made. And it really is very insulting to all of us. I filled out a survey and I spoke about the bias of that survey. They were not open-ended. There were no open-ended questions. They are all directed towards how do you like this and what can we do better, rather than do you want it at all? And also, you do not do a survey after the fact. You do
30 more seconds.
beforehand.
30 seconds, Lucy.
Oh, well, thank you for that. So anyway, it was a very dishonest presentation given by Kyle. I went up there when they were out there on the street, and people who were there have been brought in because they heard it's an open street. So of course they're filling out the survey in one particular way,
Lucy,
rather than going to the actual residents who live there.
Lucy, finish up. Thank you.
Yeah, the residents who, and let me just point out one more thing.
Lucy, that's it.
The park is right there.
Lucy, thank you. Your 2 minutes are up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody. It's been a interesting and somewhat difficult meeting. I think we have expressed the interest of the Transportation Committee that will go to the full board for its vote. I will be around for that one. I probably won't be here in the September meeting. I will be in India. All right. I will try, if we're still able to do remote, I will try to do it from India. It'll only be about 2 o'clock in the morning. So thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I want to thank everybody for their courtesy. And I apologize again for what happened at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you.